Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matters Radio, a therapy session that, frankly, we all need, but just really don't have the time for. And like every good therapy session, it should be associated somewhere in the world of the in-between, the gray per se. Now, you're probably asking, what qualifies me to take us on this journey? Well, who am I? I'm Michael Devine, licensed professional counselor, life coach, author of the book Failure to Launch, and my lovely new co-host and producer, registered nurse Jillian Devine. How are you doing this evening, hon?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's kind of exciting, new show, new host. The armchair. I love the armchair, but he's just missing. He went away, didn't come back. We're still trying to figure out where he's at. I don't know. It's crazy.
Did anybody send a search party?
Well, we tried, and then we got busy with other things.
Armchair quarterback.
I know.
Where are you?
Hopefully he'll be back. I don't know. We'll find out. But for tonight, we have a new show format. We've talked about it a little bit. Tonight, it's getting exercised, right? I mean, I got notes. I got outlines.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
I know. This is what she brings to the table. I needed a producer that was going to keep me in line, and there's not many people that can take on that order.
Very strict. Very strict outline.
I know. But we've already kind of promoted the show a little bit. We asked you guys, what do you want us to cover? What are the things that are important to you? You have a counselor at your disposal who's willing to be a little too honest, frankly. So for tonight, what do we got? What do we have teed up for us? What are we gonna?
So after I reached out on social media, one of the more resounding things that a lot of parents wanted to talk about was just how to successfully reintegrate their kids back into school after everything of the past 18 months.
That's what's been going on. Has there been?
I don't know.
Gosh.
I don't even know what they're talking about.
I know. Yeah, it's been tough. I mean, being a counselor, you'd think I would know how to do all this the right way, and it's been a challenge for us even. I mean, a lot of parents it's been a challenge for.
I don't think anybody knows how to do it the right way. It's just doing it a way to get by, and just to get by, I feel like every day is just getting by and molding yourself to somehow be successful to get through it.
Was it the Marines saying adapt and overcome? I feel like I've been like a broken record with that. But I mean, really, it's adapt and overcome until the next challenge comes along, right? Mm-hmm. So now I know there's a lot of ways for us to talk about this. And I know you asked amazing questions. You actually even had it almost like a ranking of these are the biggest issues parents were asking about with reintegration. So what's the first big one that you were seeing parents ask about that we can kind of go over?
So I think just many kids are struggling and adapting, especially if they were at home doing virtual classes and then now converting back to being back in class. I think they're just struggling and adapting to, transitioning that environment. I know a lot of kids were strictly at home for probably a year, I would guess at least, before we finally transitioned back, or a year and a half for some. And then some did like a hybrid model, and some didn't do it at all. I think some kids were in school the whole time, I think. Yeah,
it really, I mean, as a clinician having clients through multiple school districts, I mean, I had to almost have notes of, well, what was your arrangement? Because almost every school district was a little bit different.
Yeah, they all were different.
I mean, I would say the number one thing that I had parents asking about, especially over the last couple of months, is actually been talking about anxiety with their kids and the anxiety that their kids have been facing. And this one's actually really interesting. We're actually going to cover one part of it a little bit more in our next week's episode. But a lot of times parents are going, my kid's really anxious and I don't know what to do. It's playing out at home. And it's funny because when I actually would sit down and talk with kids, the older kids were more, I don't know what my mom is talking about. Whereas the younger kids were the ones that maybe identified a lot more with anxiety with going back to school.
Yeah, a lot of times they also would say, they're fine, and almost like it didn't bother them as much.
Yeah.
And I feel like having a younger child too, the adaptability was so much different with her than what I had been hearing otherwise.
Yeah, and parents, we have a lot of influence on our kids, and I think and I know the old iteration of the show would dive more into the politics of this, and I'm not going to get into the politics of if your family believes in vaccines or mask, not mask. But I think depending, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, if you're a parent that believes a lot in masking and vaccinations, there was a lot of anxiety. A lot of the kids talked about the anxiety of going back into school. And Eleanor even asked, like, well, what happens if there's a kid next to me not wearing his mask, correctly? You have some families that are very staunchly anti-mask, and then the kids have talked a lot about the anxiety that they're feeling with going back into those environments. And, the thing with kids, I mean, they're so adaptable. We're talking like that 8 to 12 kind of range. They're so adaptable, and they're very malleable. And a lot of the anxieties that they have are the anxieties that we have. Frankly, kids have, like, literally, they believe more our perception of reality than their own. And so let's say they're not worried about something, and then we tell them you should be worried. Well, then they reject their own view of reality and accept, what we're putting down. And so a lot of parents are asking, well, what do I do with my child when they're so anxious? And I think number one is you have to manage the anxiety. Life is scary. There's a lot of things out there, but as I always tell people, we have to prepare our kids and for the world, rather than shield them from it. And so we have to be honest with them, but we also have to make sure that the things that we're telling them are accurate, helping them understand, like, how to analyze the evidence, what's realistic, what's factual, what's irrational, how to know the difference between the two. And so just making sure your kids have an accurate view of, it could be coronavirus, it could be of masking, anti-masking, at least having a realistic viewpoint of it, because that manages their anxiety. Not bringing it up more than what you need to. I don't know about you, but I've seen parents they constantly talk about this, whether it be from a political perspective, a medical perspective. Don't talk about it more than what we have to, because a lot of times you just got to tell them once, they'll be fine.
They're also hearing it more than what you're saying. I mean, they're hearing it on TV, in passing, commercials. They hear you talk about it. It's everywhere. So, I mean, that in itself creates anxiety. And almost, I think, for older kids, they hear it, then they hear their parents talking about it, and then they've had enough at that point. They already had enough with a lot of things as it is, because they're teenagers. So it's just like one more thing for them to be annoyed with, Exactly.
And I'm not pretending to be an expert on every single kid. I can only attest to the kids that I see in my office every day, right? And the thing is that I delineated the age groups because a lot of times 12 and above, they have their own opinion a lot of times. Even if you disagree with them, they're going to form a lot of times their own opinion. So I find that a lot of times the parents are misunderstanding what their kids are going through, the problems that they're having, like on anxiety, when they're being honest with me. No, I'm fine. And a lot of times it's more, hey, how anxious are you? And are we sure it's anxiety? So you have to kind of delineate the difference. But I think with our young kids, we just have to really be realistic. Not focus on, a lot of the negatives, be realistic with it, not bring it up more than we have to, control like some of the auxiliary stuff like the news that they might kind of hear and listen to, and just talk to them. Just hear them out, but also be able to redirect. Like, oh, okay, like there's nothing wrong. Parents, I think, sometimes feel like they have to listen to everything. Even when it's irrational, there's no problem with just going, you know what, acknowledge it, but then be like, okay, what should we be doing right now? And just redirect them, basically. So, yeah, I think as far as the anxiety kids are feeling, young kids, I think that's what I'd suggest. The older kids, you know what? Really make sure that anxiety is what they're feeling and have that conversation with them. So if anxiety was one of the big ones I think we saw, I think the next big one that I saw was more just adjusting to the learning environment, going from being completely off on their own and, and basically being home alone on a computer, watching their teachers on Zoom. Frankly, most kids were doing multiple things at once, maybe having TV on in the back room, maybe YouTube was on, maybe they had their phone, multiple distractions, to now being back in person again and listening to a teacher. And I don't know, like that is the one I think parents complained to me the most. They're saying how they're having fights with their kids at the end of school because they don't want to do their work. They're exhausted. kids are telling me I'm not even motivated. I frankly just don't even really want to do anything. And so once again, when we talked about the anxiety at first, no, the older kids are going, it might look like anxiety. For them, it's just something has changed. They've gotten so far away from what they normally do, that little 24-hour circadian rhythm, that this is the problems that we're having. I mean, we saw that with Eleanor pretty badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when she had to come home and was a home 100%, you were working in the basement. I'm a nurse. I had to go to work every day. I didn't have a choice. And, you know, we started relying more on anything to entertain her. I mean, she was only 6 at the time, so just so that we could still work and make a living and then also try to homeschool at the same time. And, you know, it was challenging, but we also have had a very strict regimen with her in terms of screen time and tablet time up until that point. And then when, you know, everything happened, we had to just do whatever we could to keep her entertained so that, you know, we could get what we needed to get done to survive through all of that, which meant more tablet time, more screen time, whether it be TV or just tablet. Plus, she was doing online virtual schooling of some sort, however that worked for her kindergarten at the time. So overall, it was super challenging, and we're still struggling with that now. And it almost became an addiction for her, where she only wanted to do tablet time all the time. And, you know, that was not a normal thing for us. We were very strong about that. All her friends, or not all of them, but a lot of them had like unlimited iPad and tablet time. And, you know, we always were very mindful of that and, you know, made a point for her not to be that way.
Yeah, and it was challenged because, like, we went out of our way to try to raise her going, no, we're not going to be attached to a tablet or a TV screen. But then here we are, we get locked down. The only way they were going to learn was through remote. And then all of a sudden, you know, you just kind of noticed her asking to be on the tablet more, asking for all these things. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that why is it my kids are having so much trouble now paying attention, you know, coming home at the end of the day just gassed, nothing left in the end of the take, just not having the motivation to want to do it. And frankly, we have to acknowledge that dopamine little cycle that we get into. It's literally called the dopamine reward circuit. And our brain literally gets hardwired into what we pay attention to and the reward that we get from it. Electronics are literally designed to manipulate that dopamine reward system, to keep us engaged, to make us want to stay on it. And just like any addiction, whenever you go to do something where the intensity is not there, like you've developed a tolerance, the results we get are the kids don't want to pay attention. I mean, that's literally why we prescribe Adderall and stimulants for kids with ADD, is that it gives them more dopamine so they can pay attention. If you think I'm lying or this is just something I'm pulling out of my ass, no, literally, the COOs of Facebook and Apple and Sean Parker, like the old Facebook, a guy that helped start, literally they all came out and said, yeah, we designed this thing to be addictive. We designed our interfaces to be addictive and maximize that attention that we have. And so we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to reset that little dopamine, little reward kind of like little circuit, basically. We're doing that with our daughter right now. And so I think you need to detox from it. One of the things that I've been working on with clients, and this doesn't matter what age you are, we should only be online with our screens for literally for a young brain, hour and 10 minutes, hour and a half is where we get max attention. We need a break then. We need at least a 20, 30-minute break in between when we start looking at a screen again. Our screens they're heavy with blue UV light. It stimulates the brain like a cup of coffee. And so when our kids are on screens right before they go to bed, their brains are racing. They go to try to read. They can't really internalize anything because their brain is moving a million miles an hour. So we need to have like these digital detoxes. I mean, it's kind of messed up that the tech CEOs, the ones that are creating all this technology, they're the biggest proponents and practitioners of these little digital detoxes, basically. So it's a simple thing to do. I believe very strongly in this theory of Kaizen. It's a Japanese principle of continuous improvement, where I think when we're trying to make some changes with our kids and our own lives, we try to make these wholesale changes, and then parents go, well, it worked great for a week, but then we're right back to where we were. It's like, the whole idea of this podcast, doing it in this modality. I didn't want to do it because it seems like self-help is really great at telling you how to make all these changes, but then we're talking about it in therapy session, not doing it. Mm-hmm. It's because we got to start with small things, even if they're ridiculously small. Parents might go, well, what's a 20-minute break? Well, that's a place to start. Imagine going, well, you're only going to get 30 minutes the rest of the night, and you got 4 hours now to kill. Mm-hmm. It's not going to work. It's great in theory. We have to work up towards that. I'm not going to sit here and go, here's the research that shows how many minutes. Every family is different. Every lifestyle. We get it. Busy nights, it is easier, to have that, especially if you're a single parent. So I'm not going to sit there and pass judgment on putting a time amount. But we have to start somewhere. So start with 20, 30-minute breaks in between when you're looking at electronics. Having little breaks almost in the afternoons even. Having blue UV filters on your screens. The blue UV light is what stimulates the brain more than anything. So let's start with that. You can make that change tonight, tomorrow. We just made that change of our daughter tonight. So it's a little thing that we can do. The other one, that circadian rhythm. We literally have a 24-hour cycle of when our body realizes it's going to wake up, when it should pay attention, when it's going to get work done, just like when it goes to bed. There's a whole field of sports science where literally football teams, they'll practice at the time that the game is going to be because they know neurologically, physiologically, our brains and body are ready to roll. So our kids got into these really bad habits of literally just paying attention to a screen with all these different distractions. They were sedimentary, sitting at home. They didn't have a teacher forcing them to do anything. They weren't doing their homework. They were kind of doing their homework in fits and starts. So then when school starts, do we really expect them for a year, basically, they've been doing one thing? No. Heck, I mean, Jill, what was it like when you did a summer off of college? What was it like going back into the fall?
Horrible.
It was brutal. That was 3 months.
It's horrible just having a 3-day weekend.
But if you think about, imagine an entire year.
Yeah, I know.
It's a year of habits, right? So once again, this Kaizen principle of, are they going to change absolutely everything? No. Let's pick one change that you can make with your kids. So let's say it's bedtime. They're going to bed way too damn kind of late. Well, then it's like, okay, so they're going to bed at midnight. We want them to go to bed at 11 or maybe 10:30. Well, start 30 minutes earlier. We're going, well, Mike, that's still an hour and a half too late. Well, you know what? They can do 30 minutes earlier and get used to that. Mm-hmm. And then after a couple of weeks, they're doing that 100%. Dial it back another 30 minutes. It's super easy. Realistic kind of changes. If they're having a difficult time getting their brain to quiet down. So ask your kids, well, what's the problem? Why is it that you're not able to get to bed in that 30 minutes? Oh, I'm doing my work. Well, how about we then disconnect from our screen time 30 minutes before we go to bed? So it's a simple little change that we can make basically with that. The other part is, guys, they'll get over it. It's like mental stamina. It's literally called ego strength. It sucks to have to pay attention in school. But at least for a lot of us that maybe aren't having ADD or maybe some other kind of neurodiversity little challenges, that's a separate kind of conversation. But for our kids that don't have that excuse, basically, when our brain is confronted with a decision, I'm either going to choose to pay attention or I'm going to choose not to. If we choose to pay attention like we have to, our brain will literally almost it's like salivating in your mouth when it needs more saliva to digest food. It will make more neurochemicals to make it easier to pay attention. It takes about a month. All right. They've been in school about a month now, about a month and a half. All right. Real brain changes take about 90 days. And so they will get over it. As long as we keep a structure, it will add up. We shouldn't be bugging out about it quite yet. So I think that's the big ones as far as just that struggling and adapting as far as from academics and anxiety. Those are the big ones that I'm really seeing. What else were you seeing on there as far as other topics parents were having problems with that they wanted our input on?
Like social skills and getting back into school, struggling to make friends, especially the transitions between like just starting school into kindergarten, those fifth graders going into middle school, the eighth graders going into high school, those big life, milestones, and getting back in and reintegrating into, friendships and making friends. And then if they're already socially awkward, then it's even worse. And if they already struggle in that area, then it's even harder.
Yeah, so. That is one where I think the age really doesn't matter on this one, because social skills are these things that we learn. Frankly, it's one of those things where if we use it, we lose it. They've actually even done studies where they had kids that they call them supercomputer users, where they were like on the computers like 15 plus hours a week. They didn't have a lot of face-to-face interaction with people. And what they did neuroimaging of a normal population of people, and then the more people use computers, and literally the less they were around people, the parts of their brain that pick up on facial expression, conflict resolution, interpersonal connectiveness, picking up on the emotions of other people, thinking outside of yourself, those parts of the brain were far less developed, less dense. And so we literally have this thing of if you don't use it, you lose it. It's like atrophy. Mm-hmm. If you get a broken bone and your muscles waste away. But it's not like I don't want anyone to think, oh, great, my kid's brain has holes in it now. It's literally rotting their brain. No. I'm not saying that, right? It's just like, we take a cast off. It takes a couple weeks or like a month to get it going back again. And for our kids that maybe aren't like our kids on the spectrum, neurodiverse, social anxiety, just being around kids, practicing again, getting out there, dealing with just the sensory of having all these people, it will get better. Now, that doesn't mean though if we don't do anything. If we're seeing problems, like noticing them not hanging out with kids at all, them talking about it almost like they wish they had things to do. You're seeing their mood change a little bit. Try talking to them. I know sometimes, hey, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Sometimes you got to take a chance. So, hey, listen, everything's all right. Like, I know you're not talking with so-and-so again, and I don't really hear you talking much about it like last time. I want to check in. Is everything okay? They might say no, and if they say no, go, all right, well, anytime you want to talk about it, please let me know. Like, give them that space. Sometimes with kids, especially the older they are, putting it on the table and then walking away and letting them know that you care, but you're also giving them the space to come to you when they will. That is sometimes the best thing that you can do, even as a parent. Your anxiety.
You're dying inside.
Oh my God, I gotta know. But I'm telling you, like, I've been doing this a while. It really works. All right. But I also say sometimes if you're going to complain about something, my dad was big on this. Like, what are you going to do about it? And so if kids are complaining about it, like, okay, like there's this thing called the theory of proximity. Let's say we have kids that were struggling, maybe even before COVID and everything happened. I don't have a lot of people to connect with, and I don't have a lot of things to do. Well, there's not a lot of options out there right now because of COVID. There's still some things that are shut down, some of the social groups, some of these, just the things that kids do for fun, maybe not have all the options. But the theory of proximity is you put yourself in a proximity of people that you like to be around, the types of people that people you like to be friends with. Well, have them come up with some ideas. And it's okay to go, well, listen, I want to help. I love you. And I have no problem hearing you talk about how unhappy you are with not having any friends or not knowing what to do. But you got to do something about it. And it's okay to go, hey, the second you're ready to do something about it, I'm ready in here. But if you don't want to, hey, I'm going to go and do this over here. I love you, though. Mm-hmm. Now, for our kids where, especially our kids on the spectrum, this is the area that I thought we hit a brick wall, because social skills are things, especially when it's a struggle, you have to practice it. It's like software. You have to install it. And for so long, we lost every one of those opportunities. But okay, life sucks sometimes. Sometimes we have to sit there and go, okay, like, be mindful about it. All right, that sucks, but we still have to do some things about it. So every time you guys are going to the grocery store, hey, have them say hi to the cashier. Every single time that let's say you need to return something, have them return it. If there's something that they need to handle with their boss, make them call. Give them every opportunity. If someone's at the front door, the DoorDash person, make them go to the front door. If you need to drop something off at your neighbor's house from your buy-sell trade stuff, have them go and run it over and say hello. There's so many little mini reps that you can give that even though there might not be the social skills group that you had beforehand, just giving them that experience, I think, is hands down the best thing that you can do. And it's so simple. You can do that tonight. You can do that tomorrow. And so that's my big advice for that. And then just, if there isn't anything out there, go on Google. That's what I do on my computer, my desk. That's exactly what I do. I bust my computer out. We go on Meetup. We look on Eventbrite. We try to find something that we can make happen. They like cars. Find a car show to go to, and it's a win-win for everyone. You get to look into McLaren, and your kid's happy, and there's opportunities for them to talk to the owner of the car and asking them how fast it goes. Mm-hmm. So little things like that. So I know we got time probably for one more. All right. So what would you say the other last thing that we heard people talking a lot about?
So I think, especially the high school kids and the college kids, they're just almost like a year behind. So the high school kids are a year behind on researching colleges, getting those tours in. Everything was kind of shut down, and so they just feel like they aren't there yet, or they're indecisive. The college kids missed out because a lot of their internships were canceled. Just getting a job after college is a struggle right now. I mean, yeah, everyone's saying everyone's short-staffed, but then again, there's companies that aren't because they held on to everything throughout the whole shutdown, or they're struggling financially and they have cut back. I mean, how many companies have laid off hundreds and thousands of people over the last year? And a lot of these college kids, those are the companies they want to work for. And now everything they thought they wanted is, well, they do want, but it's even more of a struggle to get into now. Yeah. So,
and that's, I hear it from parents of high school kids. I hear it from high school kids. I hear it from my college kids. It's, those are, I think if you're a senior right now in college or high school, I mean, no one's going to argue that COVID and the shutdowns, screwed you guys over the most. But the reality is it screwed over a lot of people. Everyone's in the same boat. And there's nothing wrong as a parent listening, hearing out kids and how frustrated they are. But nothing's going to change the fact that is the reality. Dennis Lear say life sucks. Sometimes you got to get a helmet. That's how it is. My dad always said, hey, you can wish in one hand, you can shit in another. Which one do you think's going to fill up first? And we can wish those things didn't happen, but they are. Mm-hmm. And the second we can level with kids is the second now we can start having a conversation on, great, now what are we going to do about it? If you're a high school kid or if you're a parent of a high school kid, there are so many jobs out there. They're hiring managers. I read article after article of restaurants, of casual fine dining, literally small retail shops, managers being the high school kids because they're the only ones that are working right now. I made I think $4.10 an hour when I was 16. Their kids getting paid $15 an hour to be shift leaders and team leads. Those positions are available, and so you want to show something on a college resume. Applying a leadership position, a job, you can volunteer. I know there's only 8 weeks, 10 weeks until you're sending your college applications in. And so whatever is on there is pretty much what's on there. And so you have 10 weeks. Right now, you could go and volunteer. One of my favorite ones, volunteermatch.org. It's like the Google of volunteering. You can put in a cause area, what your age is. It will find something for you to do.
I've never heard of that.
It's awesome. And so focus in on that. Same thing if you're a college kid. I mean, even though, I've only had a job for 2 months. Well, great. That's still better than not having a job for 2 months. Those are the options that we got. But everybody is in the same boat, though. And we can't go back in time to wish that we would have taken that job in our junior year. Guess what? Your junior year didn't exist. But you have what you have left right now. Volunteering and getting a job, even if it's for a short amount of time. Ask family, friends. I am the biggest one to go, hey, if you've been a good kid and people are willing to do a solid for you, ask your family and friends, hey, who is someone that runs a small business that might need some help? maybe needs a volunteer. What about your church? Anything. It could be a little sports team, anything. Hit up everybody. See what you have the ability to do. I've been known to write letters of recommendation for my clients. I'll say my mentor. But it's one of those things to where ask anyone, and people are willing to do that for you. The last little one is write a badass essay, but be different. Now, don't be so different, like we always said with resumes, the flashy color. No, I'm not. But it's about, they want to look about, colleges are looking at their graduation rates, people getting jobs afterwards, not people that go into a STEM program and be one of the 60% that don't make it. They're looking for evidence of resiliency, what you bring to the student body, especially nowadays when they're not really counting the SATs and ACTs as much. So they really want to see something different. Let's say you had a struggle. You may be hesitant to write about it, but you know what? It lets people know who you are and what you've been through. And so we have to accept where we're at. And I know sometimes it might seem kind of blunt and just kind of like, all right, yeah, that's great and all, but sometimes that's what we need to hear. There's a time to be tender. There's a time to be very empathic. There's a time to be very like kind of slow your roll, but there's also times going, okay, life sucks. Get a helmet. All right, let's figure it out and get our hands dirty. And I think just to kind of close, things off for us today, we have to look at life. Life is great. It's not black and white. And sometimes we don't have all the solutions, and we got to think about things from a different perspective. We got to slow things down, make it very simple, think about the bigger picture of everything. And more importantly, we got to really make sure we're understanding what our kids are really going through, what questions to ask, and also maybe what are things that we're putting down on them, or maybe what are the things that we're enabling. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about on our next episode, is because it's so interesting what parents think their kids are going through, especially our older kids. But the reality is, I think a lot of times we're projecting that onto them, and we got to figure out as parents, like, when are we doing that? When are the actions that we're choosing? Maybe only serve making us feel better, but in a bigger picture, it's not really helping things at all. And so that's what we're going to do on next week's episode. But I think that covered it. What do you think, John?
I think so, too.
Yeah, I think we hit it, made it about 32 minutes, Hell of a lot better than an hour and 15 minutes. What do you say?
Yes.
These notes are working already. It's absolutely amazing.
Type A coming at you.
Oh, I love it. But hey, you know what? This is basically, how we're going to roll with things from here on out, right? So on that note, everyone, I'm Michael Devine. This is Gray Matters Radio on the 614 Radio Network all day. And we're going to get out of here. So remember, everyone, life is not black and white. It is gray. And that's exactly where we need to basically keep it. All right. So, everyone, I will see you guys next week. I hope you enjoyed the show, and it'll be one of many, maybe. All right, everyone. We'll see you guys later. Peace.
Bye.